nastavljamo naš program. Završen treći deo večeri će biti takođe izuzetno zanimljiv. Malo pre je bila postavljena jedna krupna dilema, da li je naučna fantastika proročka u svojoj biti ili je metaforička, i trebalo bi pitati prve čitaoce romana koji je dobio nagradu Evropske unije, naše večerašnje gošće Pie Leino, kako im izgledaju motivi romana Nebesa, koji je sad doživio srpski prevod u odnosu na današnjicu koja se pomalja pred njihovim očima. Naša gošća, koja je već pobrala više nagrada i u zemlji i u Evropskoj uniji, je takođe autorka još dva zanimljiva romana. Roman Ružna blagajnica govori o posebnoj poziciji ženskog principa u vremenu medijalizovane realnosti i realitija, a roman Prekovremeni rad od pre 2 godine je smešten u bliskoj budućnosti i postavlja jednu od najkrupnijih, čak i ontičkih dilema, kako bismo svoje živote provodili ako bismo znali kada bismo preminuli. Međutim, roman Nebesa govori o nečemu što je pre koju godinu bila paranoja. Danas je to realnost izmenjene geopolitičke paradigme, izmenjene sociološke paradigme, prevlasti ekstremističkih i ekstremnih socijalnih sistema, klimatskih promena, vremena u kojem naše živote moramo preumiti. Našu gošću večeras prate i sa njom razgovaraju veliko ime naše anglistike i balkanske anglistike Vladislava Gordić Petković, i takođe kao moderator tribine takođe filolog, književni kritičar, ali i prevodilac Klarka Jelena Nidžovića. Izuzetno nam je zadovoljstvo što međunarodna komponenta ovog festivala na ovaj način dobija svoje oploćenje. Hvala vam. Jelena, molim vas.
Čujte, dobro večer. Pre svega zahvaljujem ceremonijal majstoru Kosa crta konferencijeu. Mimo toga, sada već sasvim zvanično, dozvolite vas pozdravim ispred Kontrast izdavaštva. Kontrast je objavio roman Nebesa u okviru evropskog projekta pod imenom Govorite li ženski u saradnji sa Kreativnom Evropom. On podrazumeva prevod nekolicine romana na srpski jezik. Govorit ću nešto kasnije o tome zašto smo se između ostalog odlučili upravo za roman gospođe Pie Leino. Uz to, nije na odmet da pomenem da je roman prevela Jasmina Teofilović, naša draga saradnica i prevoditeljka. Vi ste već bili u prilici da čujete nekoliko sasvim podrazumevanih biografskih činjenica o autorki, ali moram reći da smo nas dve provele sada već nešto više od 4 sata u razgovoru, u jelu, svim tim balkanskim protokolima razgovornim i bila u prilici da nešto pobliže popričamo. Vladislavi, hvala što uzima učešće u ovom razgovoru. Mislim da je jedna od, s obzirom na rad književnica iz korpusa srpske književnosti koje je pratila i više nego na nekoliko nivoa merodavna osoba da da svoj osvrt na roman. From this point on, this conversation will be held in English, our common lingua franca, since Ms. Leino doesn't speak Serbian so far. So, be it as it may, Pia, going through your interviews, browsing through them, I got an impression that it was not your first intention to write a dystopian novel. So could you please tell us something more about the very process, about your initial idea, and how and when it shifted toward this completely logically, speculatively special genre?
Yeah, actually, Heaven was first adult book I started to write, and I was trying to capture some kind of atmosphere of future's rainy Helsinki, and I was thinking about climate change, of course, and the beautiness of the city, and what the city would look like if it was ruined because of the war, and And actually, I didn't think about it as dystopia. Of course, I had read Huxley's and Atwood's and familiar dystopia books, but I wasn't so much dystopia nerd. So I just wanted to write a good book about future, one kind of scenario, what might happen if we don't react to climate change and other problems. It took many years to finish that book, because I actually didn't know how to do it, how to capture that kind of atmosphere. And I was beginning of my career in that time, and I was a journalist, but not actually a storyteller. So I tried and failed many times, and finally I found right way to do that and describe beautiness of Helsinki and that heaven, which is virtual paradise where people are enjoying their lives. And yeah, it was a long process, and I don't understand how I had that spirit to keep going, because I was disappointed many times when I understood that this is not right. I can't say what I'm trying to, but finally I was very satisfied with that book.
May I ask you about something? While reading your book, I had this idea that this was actually Helsinki, but Helsinki on a postcard from hell. Yeah. So was this a kind of inverted dedication to your favorite city?
Yeah, I think that I love Helsinki, and I think it's a very wonderful place to live. And I had little children at that time when I was inventing that idea, and I was thinking that we are living in some kind of paradise, and I was thinking that it is so it's so easy to lose that kind of welfare state if we are not aware that how fragile it is. And yeah, I think that I'm describing places of Helsinki very precise way, and I love them. And even if they are destroyed in that book, I think that they're still beautiful.
So it's a kind of a warning, as if something worse, much worse might happen if we don't take precautions. But among so many blurbs about your books, you know that all the publishers are actually hungry for attention, and they write all these inscriptions and descriptions of your book, and some of them are actually very good, and they're hitting the point. For instance, one of these blurbs says that this is a book of a future that has forgotten the past. So this made me think, this future forgetting the past, are you actually writing about the reality that is about to be lost and never found again?
Yeah, somehow, because people in my book, they are looking backward to our times, and they're thinking that we are living too fast and ruining our world because we are some kind of insane. And in my book, people have lost their appetite to live and zest of life, and I think that they have forgotten a lot of things, like how to enjoy each other, and they spend so much time in that virtual reality that it's maybe they are very isolated from each other. They have maybe forgotten everything that is meaningful in life.
I was thinking, you know, maybe the best director who could make a script out of this book is Baz Luhrmann. Because I think of this book as a kind of Romeo and Juliet in a dystopian world. So I was thinking about maybe you could, if you would like to tell us all your secrets, but I know it's quite impossible, but maybe try to share with us this secret. How did you manage to put together a dystopian novel and a love story beneath it?
I think that that love story is very essential because I wanted that there would be something very beautiful inside of those very, very dark, it's dark, but it's still full of hope and life and joy. And I don't know how I succeeded in that, but it was essential that the beautiness of life is part of it. Yeah, I can tell that.
Jelena, I wanted to ask you a question. You know, Jelena and I had some secret conversation before you came to Serbia, and Jelena shared some of her thoughts with me. And she said that actually your book reminds her of a Serbian dystopian, well, it was not a novel, but it's a novella, that was written about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And it was called, the title of it would be A Gospel According to a Thirsty Woman. And it describes the world in 2000, the world that has lost emotions, and the world that's focused on physical beauty, on physical perfection. And we actually shared some thoughts. We would like you to read this book when it's available in English. But, I was thinking, Jelena, maybe you could help me about this. There is nothing like female imagination. It's not fair to refer to unique quality. Female imagination could refer to just a part of experience that women share. But could we maybe discuss, or could we think, or could we presume that there is a dystopian novel, a type of dystopian novel written by women exclusively? What do you think about this?
Firstly, thank you, Professor, for that uncalled question. But yeah, the very truth is that Vladislava and I did actually exchange quite a few emails regarding my intertextual viewpoint somewhere in between Taivas, Nebesa, and the Gospel According to a Thirsty Woman, which is really disregarding the fact that I read it 10 years or so ago, which really made a deep impact on me. And secondly, I couldn't agree more that imagination in itself is genderless. But on the other hand, certain themes, motives, and ways of perceiving and nurturing some sort of reality by writing is exclusively, almost exclusively female. And that said, I could be able to draw several parallels. And one of the things I would like to emphasize is that both of the female writers insist on the counterpart of hope. You quoted it to be a love. You mentioned that it's a love story. Pia said something more related to a state or an emotion of hope. So the counterparts are more exclusive and stronger in female dystopian prose. Besides that, the other parallels would certainly be including altered geopolitical and ideological viewpoints, and they would include some repressive male or phantom-like male organizations trying to to choke the voice of the free speech. But yeah, I think that the most the strongest and the most obvious common thing would be that counterpart we have in progressive, so to say, or positive emotions that are leading out of a dystopian structure or narrative. And that being said, Pia, well, once again, you told us you've been writing taivas for quite a long time, but nevertheless, it came out in 2018. So 4 years for now, we can say that the world has changed in more than one way. We all know what we're talking about. So in that sense, I'm, of course, none of us are claiming that writers are prophets or seers, except for Arthur Clarke. And their role is not to predict the future, but how have you coped with yourself and the dramatical world shifts in these past 4 years? What effect did it have on your writing? Which is maybe a good starting point to talk about your latest novel, if you want.
Yeah, I think that Heaven is still timely, and maybe even more than it used to be in 2018, because nowadays we know that, for example, COVID has showed us that we can be isolated to our homes and be totally dependent on internet. And when I was writing that, I thought that it is some kind of awful nightmare which maybe never come true. And actually, in pandemic time, it came true in many countries all over the world. And I think that the world hasn't changed maybe so much as we think. We just have seen what kind of place it is, that we are not independent. We are dependent on each other so many ways. And one little virus can shut all the world down. And wars in Europe are not over. It's also something that we have to realize that that kind of threat is always there, and history hasn't ended, even if some people have said that it might have been. So yeah, my next book, Over Time, is a different kind of scenario where it's also set in 2050s, and there is that kind of law in Finland that citizenship is restricted to 75 years. So older people, they are not forced to die, but they are encouraged to die because they don't have any kind of benefits, they don't have social security anymore. And the main character is a politician, a woman who was made up this law at the first place, and now she has to deal with it and try to figure out what to do when she is 75 years old. And it's actually quite popular in Finland, and for example, people are thinking that it could be a great movie or something, but yeah, and the third book is Apogee, which is also some kind of new kind of dystopia, and it's about machines and our relationship to machines. And yeah, I think that I'm very curious about future, and I am trying to figure out what happens. And of course, I understand that nobody is that kind of prophet who could say what really will happen. But I think that we can understand and find out phenomena which might accelerate in the future, and it's worthwhile to try to figure out which of them are important and what we should be aware of.
Yeah, thanks for that point, Pia. Actually, when we were hanging around just before this conversation, I quoted a song by Voice of the Spot of Pia, saying history does not repeat itself, does not repeat itself, does not repeat itself. Well, be it as it may, Vladislava, I'd like to ask you to deliver a sort of general impressions you for sure have on the very novel in English or Serbian. You decide, please.
Well, these days we usually discuss the so-called mansplaining as something which is weird and toxic, but we should maybe try to find our refuge in women's-plaining. This is a novel that's written from a women's point of view, but when I use the word women's, I refer to the point of view of care, anxiety, and concern for the world we live in. This book is about an artificial paradise which is constructed as a response to a world that's gone very bad, to a world that's almost beyond repair and beyond redemption. But this world, although defunct, it still can nourish a love story that might save that world. When you read the book, you will see a woman's touch in the way the disorder is pictured. You see the disorder in a city that used to be beautiful, orderly, that used to be a happy place, a good place for its citizens. But now this city is dilapidated. The city is filled with dump heaps, with filth. It's a sad place to live in, and it's also a sad place to feed in. So I really have to ask you, from a point of view of a woman who cooks every day, how did you come to this idea about the beetles, the crickets, and all these little bees and beetles that are used for cooking and for everyday diet? Was it maybe a reaction to your everyday duties as a mother and a wife, or you simply wanted to point out that the hell of the future world might be in some small things, in some small details that actually show the huge symptoms of the disaster?
Yeah, I think it's very essential that people's life is about little things. We are all eating something every day, and yes, they are cooking quite a lot in that book, and they are, for example, eating seagulls and all those kind of little animals which we don't usually eat. I think that it's partly because they don't actually care about reality anymore. They are just trying to survive so easily as they could, because they want to spend most of time in the heaven. They are concentrated on that. They are addicted to heaven, and everything is so much better there. So the food is quite meaningless for them, and so they don't want to spend their money to that, because they want to spend all their money to the heaven. And yeah, it's. I think that when we were talking about differences, men and women fiction and science fiction, I think that one thing is that maybe women are more often concentrating on human emotions and little details of everyday life, and of course I'm also very interested in technology and how it changes us and how we are changing it. But I'm not so in different kind of details, technological details. I don't describe them maybe so much as some science fiction writers do.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to move on with from the point that Vladislava and I both comprehended that what, amongst other things, makes this novel a great novel is the very depiction, the very concrete, not concrete, the very precise and colorful depiction of both the heavens and the 50 shades of Helsinki, so to say. So in that sense, what was easier for you to, when it comes to both speculation, imagination, and writing, to commit yourself to writing about the heavens, an artificial construct, so to say, or to write about your hometown from a totally different key point?
I think that my special skill is good imagination and good ideas. So I enjoyed very much imagine that heaven, and it's a place where people can feel that meditative peace of mind, and there are beautiful places like Babylonian Gardens and Normandia coast and old Helsinki, but actually even those landscapes are not so essential as that peace of mind which people has gained there. And but of course, it also was very interesting to describe Helsinki. And even if I write about familiar places, I had to go there again and watch every detail and try to smell the air and everything and try to figure out the essence of that city. And so I was able to describe it very so well.
And regarding the love story part of Taiva's Nebesa, I myself can't make myself figure out choosing between I can't conclude who the protagonist is. I've been thinking about that for seldomly while editing the novel, and from your actually most important, most exclusive viewpoint, who would you say is the protagonist of the novel? Is it Akseli or Ina, the woman he accidentally meets on the heavens?
I think that Akseli is the main character. He is a university researcher and very poor man, because university is not very good shape in that reality. And he's very addicted to the heaven. He's very lonely. And I think that Ina is stronger. She has that kind of background which gives her some kind of strength, even if she's also addicted and desperate in her own way. So I think that I concentrate on mind of Akseli and how he is changing in the book.
Yeah, thanks. And I might argue as well, I might argue that loneliness could be one of the protagonists, one of the characters in the novel. As well as heavens, you can see the heavens of being one sort of more of a character of the novel, yeah.
Or depression is the beast we have to kill.
I couldn't imagine, not in my wildest dreams, that somebody might be so more straightforward than I am. But thanks for that. Yeah. So, what is your viewpoint on that? Did you did you start from some key emotional states, developing them, or in the process of writing the book, was fact-checking and factuality more of a challenge for you?
I think that I started to that kind of point where people they have lost their zest of life. They didn't want to they didn't enjoy anything, and that's the main element of that story. And of course, it's changing a little bit, or actually quite a lot during the story. But yeah, depression is the beast of and yeah.
Okay, thanks, but I already told you during our during our conversation about my hypothesis of the fact that speculative fiction is in Finland has a reason to be so present in popular, like there in Scandinavian countries. Can you tell us something more about that growing scene of speculative fiction and dystopia in Finland currently?
Yes, I think that we are writing dystopias and speculative fiction quite a lot because we are writing a lot in general. There are very many writers in Finland, and we have quite good grants from government and good writing schools, and I'm teaching one of them to creative writing. But I think that there are quite original ideas also in Finland because we are people who spend a lot of time in their summer houses and in forests, and we like to be alone and isolated quite a lot, and maybe it's one reason why there start to be some kind of extraordinary odd ideas quite often. But I like that there, when I'm teaching in writer school, there are so many different kind of genres, and I somehow sometimes quite odd ideas, which might make a good story or then not, but ideas are important.
Yeah, I think that you may find your trip to Serbia quite insightful and inspiring when it comes to your literary interests. So we're just about to conclude the conversation actually by some like really basic mainstream questions. Such would be what's your experience with the readership so far, and what are you currently reading? Do you even have time to read since you've practically switched to 3 micro jobs you're involved in? Except being a mother, and that's a fourth job.
Yeah, I think that writers have to read a lot because it's some kind of it's food for our mind. We couldn't create without reading. Actually, right now I'm reading Kazuo Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun, which is about artificial intelligence and its relationship with a child. And I'm very interested in that kind of ways we are communicate with machines, and in overtime there is actual virtual friend, Heath Ledger. He looks like that actor who died very young, and he is a friend of that older lady. And it was very, very nice to think what kind of conversation human being and machine would have together, and there is a lot of humor in it, I think, because they have so different kind of ways to look at life.
I have one of those basic questions, but questions we cannot miss, questions we should not forget to ask. What was your soundtrack when you were writing the novel? What was the music you were listening to?
Yeah, actually Nightwish was on my list. You can find my list from Spotify. I have a list for all my books, and in Heaven's list there was, for example, Brothers in Arms and Zombie from Cranberries, and Nightwish, of course. Actually, Kate Bush is my newest list. it's inspiration music for my novel to come, which I don't actually know what it's all about, but I know.
Is it cloud busting, maybe?
Yeah, cloud busting. Yeah. So yeah, music is very important. I think it gives you that kind of space where you can try to capture that atmosphere somehow. So that's why I have those lists. Very good question.
Yeah, and although I'm starting to enjoy this conversation more and more, I'm sorry to say that we should be concluding in like a couple of minutes' time. So if anybody from the audience has any questions, feel free to ask them. And needless to say that Pia will be available for book signing if later on if you're interested, of course. So please go. Yeah. Yeah. Would you like to see a movie?
Yeah, I think that definitely it would be so great, and I think that there is actually some people who are trying to make movies of my books, but let's see what happens. They are very long processes and very unsure that anything will happen. But I think that I see my books pictures in my mind, and many people say that they are that kind of books which you can see going on in your eyes. And of course, it would be. I think that it would be great to see what kind of heaven some directors and actors would create.
Well, yeah, hopefully they won't neglect the beautiful dystopian landscapes of Belgrade I've shown you today. I think that they would be more than suitable for this kind of work. Anybody else by any chance? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that yes, books are they can show something which TV shows can't, and of course they can describe your inner feelings and emotions better, and they are special way to people connect to each other, because every person is reading a book different way. So there is just not one heaven out there and one Nebesa. There are plenty of them because people are seeing different ways, and it's precious, I think.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, the last question, please.
Sorry, I didn't hear.
Is it suitable for graphic novels? The depiction of Taivas. Would you like to see it as a graphic novel?
Graphic novel.
Strip comic book.
Yeah, maybe. I think it would be nice too to see what kind of pictures they would draw, and yeah, why not? I have never thought about it, but why not? Actually, I understand that. Okay.
Well, the librarians did, awarding you the Helmet Award. Right?
Yeah. People, librarians in Finland give me a prize which says that they are some kind of or actually heaven is some kind of classic already. I hope that they will continue to live somehow, and that I think that good dystopia never goes away from. It doesn't lose its meaning. For example, Orwell's 1984 is still timely, even if 1984 went away a long time ago, because it's all about topics which are so important that they will continue to live in history and repeat themselves. And sometimes threat of, for example, Orwell's world it's tinier and it's maybe doesn't exist, but it will come again when history goes on, and that's why it's always timely.
Yes, I think we could ask two more questions, which might be which might be a kind of invasion of your privacy. What is now your net worth, and what is your Netflix worth?
What do you mean?
How much money did you make?
With this book?
Is it huge?
No.
Huge quantities or not?
No. I think that selling books is not good business. But actually, I'm living as a writer right now. I have been mainly a writer 2 years, and but it's mostly because of grants from the state, not because I'm selling so much. But of course, I hope that if there will be some films, then I would get some more. Yeah. I think that there is option, but I'm waiting for that.
Sincerely hoping you get to that spot. Yeah, I can't say. Yeah, she killed the beast of depression and later became rich. Be it as it may, I'm more than happy for Contrast Publishing for having had the chance to publish your novel, as well as for the fact that we conducted this conversation. So I thank you, Vladislava. It's always a pleasure. So, zahvaljujem vam se svima. Još jednom, samo napred u pogledu romana, potpisivanja i tako dalje. Hvala što ste pratili ovaj deo festivalskog programa.